Hurricanes, tornadoes, anthrax, pandemic influenza, school violence, air and seaport incidents.
There's not enough real-world situational-based planning. Up until now, I think it's been an exercise in compliance. It's been an exercise to say, yes, we have an emergency plan, a disaster plan, and because we have one and it's sitting on a shelf, then we are qualified then to apply for certain grants, from the federal government. So, but that doesn't mean that they've ever blown the dust off of them, and 50 pages aren't this page intentionally left blank, right? So, that whole state of preparedness, you really need to have that plan. You need to exercise it. You need to engage with a sensibility broker, people who've been there and done that can say, these are the things you need to be thinking about. And oh, by the way, there are sources to get that paid for. And, maybe you can use some assistance and guidance in how to get to that too. When you look at the continuum of this emergency management environment, mitigation, preparation, planning, response, recovery, and then it's a cycle, and it just keeps going around that cycle irrespective of what point you've entered it. You need to take a look at that based upon some standard protocol, and NIMS is as good a thing as any, and ICS is as good a protocol as any. It's something, it's codified, and it gives some clear definition of how things should be structured. So it really comes down to that state of current state preparedness and testing your plan, and testing your equipment, and ensuring that you've got the right gear in the right place that can actually serve you in the event that you need it. Just because it turns on doesn't mean it's going to stay operational. We need to have a means in which to track all of that, to understand what your assets are, what their capabilities are, who's assigned to what role and what function. That's where Ramsafe comes in our mind. I mean, you have a great tool in Ramsafe to be able to plug all of that in and to be able to give the city a real view of what every asset is, where it is, what its capabilities, capacities are, and whether the asset's human or a fire truck.
We take a look at the planning, the vulnerabilities, the risk. We do mitigation where we can. What can we do to minimize the impact of those things? We write plans, do training, do exercises. We hopefully learn from those exercises, replan, and then when the event occurs, then we go back, we do critiques, we do improvement plans after that, and we start the cycle all over again.
Well, the first thing that I would do, if I was a city's emergency manager, starting off brand new, first thing I would do is go to the FEMA website. It's unbelievable what information's on the FEMA website. And all of a sudden you can see that there's training courses and introductory courses into different things that are involved in emergency management that prompt you to do the next thing and the next thing. And then you realize after you go through that, hey, I need to find out who has a software package that's going to allow me to do this. And you do a little research, boom, that's Ramsafe. If I need to beef up my emergency management staff, where can I find personnel? Boom, that's a general physics. The communications piece, Unisys can provide all kinds of different communications. The place to start, in my opinion, is at the FEMA website.
What I would tell somebody who's putting in a disaster recovery system today is put it in now and use it. Don't wait until after the storm to use it. A lot of people say they have systems in place, but they don't use them on a daily basis. Use the systems now, the Ramsafes and that type of thing, to track your daily operations so that when it comes time to actually put it in play after a disaster, everyone's familiar with the operations, they know how to use it, and it's been in place and in use. Don't wait for a disaster to put in disaster recovery.
In the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, with streets outside filling up with water, the city moved to quickly establish an emergency operations center in the ballroom at the battered Hyatt Hotel across from City Hall. The need for integrated facilities and information was more apparent now than ever.
What we had was very separate facilities. You had police headquarters, you had the 911 center, which kind of worked on its own, and then you had the emergency operations center, which was based out of City Hall. It was on the 9th floor of City Hall. And what we learned from the storm was it would probably be a good idea to have all those facilities together in one hardened building or one hardened facility.
Communications, the lifeblood of managing an emergency, was in shambles.
The mayor's office, Greg Mefford and some of his team had managed to establish some communications using VoIP line, but from a local perspective, to be able to communicate with and command The infrastructure was completely broken down.
Unisys brought in the ComHub into New Orleans. This particular solution has been developed with the idea of creating a wireless infrastructure in the middle of nowhere. Because all the telecommunications lines were down here in New Orleans, we used a satellite link. That link provided both voice and data to the city of New Orleans and their staff. As a matter of fact, one of the telephone lines was used by Mayor Nagin to call the White House.
Like most disasters, the recovery process for Katrina is orders of magnitude longer and more expensive than the emergency response itself.
Your event is going to occur and it's a day, 2 days, 3 days long. Recovery is your biggest phase. Obviously, here we are 6 months into Hurricane Katrina, and if you take a look around the Lakeview area, the lower 9th Ward, New Orleans East, we're going to be recovering for quite some time. Much longer than the storm lasted, much longer than we used to prepare for any event previous to it happening. Recovery is going to take much longer than any of the other phases.
Part of the recovery is making sure city departments can remain actively engaged in rebuilding the city while supporting the returning population. The city instituted a 311 center, powered by a Ramsafe knowledge base and mapping, to handle up to 1,000 calls per day regarding availability of services and problems in the neighborhoods. Ramsafe GIS maps are used to support the 311 center and numerous city agencies. The heart of the massive recovery effort is in rebuilding and replacing billions of dollars of infrastructure. Hundreds of millions of dollars have already been spent. Maximizing FEMA reimbursements is critical.
We do the public assistance portion of this. Whenever a disaster hits, any resources that you may spend for medical, fire, police, EMS, your sewage and water board, anything like that, overtime, everything can be reimbursed, and that's what we're trying to do, is get them their money back. Ramsafe has opened up a doorway. In my years of experience of doing this, it's always been sit down on the Excel spreadsheet, type it in, and roughly doing one project worksheet for $1 million could take you about 6 weeks. We can do it in a couple hours. With Ramsafe, we scan in what we need, we put it into a file, and it will automatically search for that particular scanning and put it in with that file. It's almost completely automated. I mean, it's just short of having a microphone on the end of your computer.
One of the biggest efforts we made, and one of the efforts we made when we brought in the Ramsafe computer technology, was to be able to track what we're doing, to keep up with it at a very fine-grained level, when you consider the fact that it was hard to find a meal some days and you're trying to track this massive recovery effort. So what the individual was relating to me from City Hall was, he works out of the CAO's office, and they were doing a lot of vehicle replacement and property replacement, large things like that. And what he indicated to me was that by being able to track this stuff in the software and manage that process, there were a lot of things that would have slipped through the cracks in a manual process that probably the city would not have gotten reimbursed for, or it would have been at a lower rate, or we would have gone past the statute of limitations, if you will, on getting reimbursed that we were able to get early, when normally, because of the state of the situation, we wouldn't have caught those things. And he estimated the value of those items in the tens of millions of dollars. Come June 1st, we're back in the next hurricane season, and we really realize this is not our permanent emergency operations center here. It's going to have to move again, so there's a lot of critical issues.
Team Unisys, delivering the people, process, and technology to rebuild New Orleans.